Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. Today marks the first day of the holy month of Ramadan, so we're wishing all our viewers all around the world a very happy and blessed Ramadan for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, in tonight's episode, we're going to be focusing on the Egyptian-African relations, the past, the present, and the future. We're going to be looking at the Egyptian issue with Ethiopia regarding the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that has actually Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia part of that equation. We're going to be following up on the developments that have been going on for almost a decade now. We're also going to be looking at the Egyptian-African relations in general, trying to achieve development and sustainable development as part of a major vision to be achieved in 2063 and for Egypt specifically by 2030. And joining us here tonight in the studio to shed more light on this issue is Dr. Cherif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion with Dr. Amir, let's check out this report regarding President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi urging Ethiopia to cooperate in the Nile water file. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received visiting Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Cairo, where they exchanged viewpoints on developments related to the Ethiopian dam conflict. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassem Radi said that President al-Sisi told Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov that failing to resolve the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam crisis would negatively impact the security and stability of the region. Al-Sisi affirmed that the water issue is a matter of national security for the country, stressing the necessity of reaching a comprehensive and legally binding deal between Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan on the filling and operation of the dam. Meanwhile, Lavrov affirmed Russia's unwavering refusal of the compromising of Egypt's water rights and a rejection of unilateral measures in this regard. He expressed appreciation for the sincere and relentless efforts by Egypt to resolve the crisis and said he hopes an agreement that achieves the interests of all through negotiations is reached as soon as possible. Monday's meeting also saw discussions on the Libyan crisis and issues of bilateral interest, including cooperation between Egypt and Russia on the security and military level. al-Sisi stressed Egypt's firm strategic stance on restoring security and stability in conflict-hit countries in the region. On Libya, al-Sisi affirmed the necessity of clearing the country from mercenaries and undermining illegitimate foreign interference in Libyan domestic affairs to allow for holding national elections in December. Lavrov praised Egypt's efforts to resolve the Libyan crisis, adding that this has consolidated Egypt's role as a central pillar for security and stability in the region. Later, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry and visiting Russian counterpart held a press conference after they held talks in Cairo. Lavrov said Moscow is convinced that there is a resolution to the Ethiopian dam crisis that would guarantee the legitimate rights of the three countries, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. He stressed that Russia supports negotiations among the three countries under the auspices of the African Union as a way to reach a resolution to the dispute because Moscow believes in African solutions for African problems. For his part, Shoukry said that Egypt believes that Russia has the ability through its bilateral relations with the various parties to the dam dispute and its capabilities, and given its international prestigious impact and position to impress on all sides the need to reach a resolution and push the parties to refrain from unilateral acts. The foreign minister said that for a decade now, Egypt has been trying to reach an agreement during negotiations and has shown great flexibility in this regard. He added that water rights of downstream nations are an existential issue which could not be handled through negotiations, while one of the parties is taking unilateral measures which undermines negotiations, making them hollow.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away. Dr. Amir, now the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has been an issue over the past decade. We've been talking about it here numerously. It's a question that every Egyptian keeps asking. So what's going to happen regarding that dam? What's going to happen with Ethiopia? What's going to happen regarding this file? And so far, it has been a circle of no agreement. It has been fruitless. It's Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. We started off consulting with French firms, and then we consulted with other African countries, getting the United States administration, the World Bank, the IMF engaged in the negotiations. All the disputes regarding the Nile water file, Egypt and Sudan are trying to secure fair and legitimate right of the Nile water, but Ethiopia seems to stall and not play ball, basically. Up until quite recently, it has been Ethiopia has made its position very clear that it's not really going along with any of the negotiations. How far do you think Egypt has reached within this decade-long debate?
Well, first of all, happy Ramadan to everyone. Look, the issue of this dam, as you said, it has been a decade of negotiations and advance and retreat, and as all negotiations happened. Egypt, fortunately, has an experience in that during the Camp David Accords. And it was the most stubborn negotiator, which is the Israeli negotiator. So we have reached the level of the highest of the negotiators, but we achieved at the end our goals. So I'm optimistic about that, because in negotiations we have the experience, we have the capability, we have the relations. But let's see the other part, or the other side of this issue, which is Ethiopia. It's not a country that you can work with as a country with institutions. We have seen there are so many troubles in the inside. Even inside this country, there's warfare, civil wars, poverty, and tribal conflicts are going on, and the borders are open for other countries to go in. So this is what's difficult, that decision makers there are not one. You're not talking to one person. You have several parts. We had the same problem in Sudan at a certain time, but now, fortunately, they have gathered and they decided to have one government now, and that's why we have good relations with Sudan. The problem now is Ethiopia. And this is specific about all the African nations. South Sudan had the same problems. Salva Kiir had the problem with his vice president because of tribal affairs. But once again, Egypt managed to intervene and make things go along between them. So this is not a real obstacle for us, that they don't have one voice. Because there are some political actors there who see that why should we go in this conflict to the end of the tunnel with Egypt? Why we have to find a solution, but others are not willing to do so. And it depends on the government, whether the government of Meles Zenawi at a certain time, or now Abiy Ahmed, someone else. Maybe the next day we will have someone else who will come and be friendly to Egypt. So this is very important to see, that you don't have in front of you one front. And this is what's also dangerous, because it opens the door for foreign influence and interference. You will have countries who are willing to pay anything in order to create trouble for Egypt in the Nile. And we know several countries who are doing that. They invested lots of money in this project. although this project won't solve the problems of Ethiopia. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said, and we are sticking to this, of course, and I appreciate very well that he uses always the term our brothers in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Because we know that the conflict with a certain government does not mean we have a conflict with the people. No, they are our brothers, and we never stood against their development and their economy. Answering your question about what we're going to do about this dam, well, as I said, and President Sisi said it, the development has started. We want to negotiate about the mechanism, how you will use it in order to benefit Ethiopia and benefit Egypt and all the countries. There is also another point about the investment that is done in there. We want to tell our brothers there in Ethiopia, why all this focus from foreign countries about the Renaissance Dam? Why this money didn't go to other projects to develop the economy there, to build schools, to build hospitals, to find solutions for the tribal affairs? Why there is all this chaos and only the money and the investment is focused on this dam? They have to understand that, I'm sorry to say it, but someone is playing the game there on their behalf. They are just acting for other people. That's why we have many positions. Once they say we are willing to negotiate, the next day they're not willing to negotiate. So something is wrong.
So you're saying that they already have their own civil troubles and their civil problems and divisions and more than one political voice over there, yet they're very firm and quite adamant about their stand in not really negotiating regarding this dam. So where do they get that strength from? Where do they get that sort of firm, stubborn stance from?
It has one explanation, is that the Prime Minister there, it seems that he is being financed by other countries, helping him to stand against all the struggles. We have seen in other parts in Ethiopia, the Tigray part, and what took place, and the videos of the genocide took place there. It was very, very sad, and the people who were killed, the innocent civilians there, and then the Eritrean forces went into the borders there. So, as I said, someone is playing the game there. So the strength of refusing someone is giving the orders, do not negotiate with Egypt about this issue. Although he knows very well that this is harming the future of his own country. Maybe it's not harming his political future, and that's the point.
Yes.
But it's not. But it will harm the future of Ethiopia and its relations with Egypt, because, as President Sisi said, it will create chaos. What's the use of it? The Nile is the wealth for everyone, and if they want to start a development, we will be the first, and Egypt was the first to help Ethiopia to regain its position and to have economic development. But why is this? This is not the only way for them. Why they're insisting that this is the only way and not negotiating about it? So I think that the decision makers there, they are willing, unfortunately, to sacrifice the future of the country for the benefit of the future of their political ambitions.
Yes.
What's the use of keeping the rule of a country who has civil war, famine, and bad relations with Sudan, bad relations with Egypt? They're condemned by even Russia when Prime Minister Sergei Lavrov came, and he condemned that what the unilateral actions are not accepted. The U.S. is not trying to really support Addis Ababa. I think that there is a question mark about the situation inside Ethiopia.
Well, if they're concerned about their own development and other foreign interference is promising, helping out with development in Ethiopia. Egypt is also part of their negotiations. They want to safeguard Egypt and Sudan's share in the Nile water, along with Ethiopia. They're also talking about transferring power, transferring expertise, developmental projects over there. So they will still be winners by getting a lot of energy, getting a lot of expertise, developmental projects. It is a win-win situation for them if they do play along. So why is it still so, why do they have this sort of allegiance to other foreign interferences and influence?
Well, it seems that the struggle inside Ethiopia on the power is a huge game. And someone, which is these foreign entities, understood that and started playing behind the scenes and started recruiting some and putting them into power. And this means money, means arms, and means media. So someone is playing these three: financing the government of Abiy Ahmed, financing him with the arms, and giving him a protection in the media that no one should expose what's taking place in the inside.
Yes.
We barely know what's going on inside Ethiopia. We heard and saw the videos about the Tigray, but it was after it was too late, when people were killed.
Yes.
And that's why someone is giving him this umbrella and telling him the main goal is Egypt. So once again, Egypt is a powerful country in this region, but a powerful country for peace and stability. And he has to accept that and understand that. For example, when we had our military maneuvers with Sudan, why they were irritated? We have maneuvers with everyone. Egypt has maneuvers with the Russians. That does not mean we are against the United States. We have maneuvers with the Americans. That does not mean we are against Russia. We have maneuvers everywhere, and this is our right. And Sudan is our neighbor, and we have historical relations. Why they try to portray that as a kind of aggression? Don't they have their own maneuvers there?
Yes.
We didn't care about it. It's the sovereign decision of every country. So I think that they're trying to find a way, and I think this is the problem of the government there, as he doesn't have a front which is against Egypt. Someone is telling him, you have to tell your people that Egypt is an enemy against your economy, against the future, and he has a tough time in achieving that. Fortunately, Egypt has excellent reputation among the Ethiopians. There are Ethiopians living here in Egypt in safety, and no one harmed them. They have all the rights protected by the law as the Egyptians.
Yes.
So I think that the government is isolated there, and they're playing a dangerous game in this kind of negotiations. And the fact is that when he started saying that I want to negotiate with Egypt, he had problems everywhere in the country. No one stood behind him.
Yes. Dr. Amir, now you've mentioned the Egyptian diplomacy. Now we've had our history with negotiations. You've mentioned the Camp David agreement, and now the Egyptian diplomacy has exercised its utmost patience, going decades, 10 years, negotiating the same file. How do you evaluate and assess the Egyptian diplomacy in dealing with such a file, and where do you see it going? Should we still exercise this patience? Should we have a different strategy to go about it? Are we doing the right thing? Is there more to be done? Are we showing a bit too much patience?
No. In diplomacy, and especially when it deals with neighbors and wars and conflict, you have to exhort diplomacy to the last breath. And people like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi knows very well that peace is priceless, and that's why we have to do it for our interests and the interests of our brothers in Ethiopia. So never consider peace as a kind of waste of time. You have to negotiate. We are doing the right thing.
Yes.
We are Cairo is open for all the visits. Even if the Ethiopians decide they should come to Egypt and negotiate, we are welcoming them. We are welcoming everyone to come and negotiate. We are contacting the leaders in Congo, in Burundi, in Kenya. We are talking to everyone, because that does not mean that we are weak. That means that we are using the soft tools that we have. But the Ethiopians have to understand, and let me be precise, not the Ethiopians, the government of Ethiopia. Because we don't have problems with the Ethiopians.
Yes.
The government of Ethiopia should understand that the language of Egypt is now getting a bit angry, because we refuse the de facto policy, which means that you will have to accept the reality. No, never we will accept the reality on the ground. There have to be negotiations, and negotiations should take its time. Why they are in a hurry? It won't solve their problems in a twinkle of an eye. No.
Yes.
So, and let me say, it's not always the warfare and all that will solve. No, we have years of experience in negotiations and policies in the region. We know how to solve our problems without a single bullet, if we want to.
Yes. Well, you've mentioned that Egypt's tone is maybe changing a little bit. And during the last meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, the president actually mentioned that still all options are on the table in case a drop of water is actually being affected by the Renaissance Dam. Now, we've seen the presidency receiving many world leaders discussing this issue, the latest of which is the Russian foreign minister, but also preceding that, many African and Western European leaders as well. So where does the public opinion stand regarding the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the stance of Ethiopia? Where do the international community and these international leaders stand regarding these negotiations? Do they understand the Egyptian-Sudanese angle? Do they understand why we're negotiating? Are they on Ethiopia's side? How are we looking in terms of the international community?
Well, let me say something. We are a country who gave an example in Libya. When President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi drew the red line in Sirte al-Jafra, everyone was waiting for the military to act. And we have the excellent military in the region, the most capable of doing any mission at any time. But we got what we wanted without moving one soldier and without one bullet. I think it's an excellent message to the international community. That's why they are rushing now to Egypt, because we managed to settle things in Libya. Once we said there is a red line, do not cross it, and we said it to Turkey, which is a NATO member. It's not any country, it's a NATO member also. And it has its armies everywhere and missionaries everywhere. They're not even sacrificing their own people. They're sacrificing other nations on foreign grounds. But we got what we wanted. So I think that's why the Russians now came. That's why the international community and the African leaders are rushing to Egypt, because they saw that President al-Sisi and the Egyptian diplomacy and the Egyptian army are the triangle that we should not forget in this equation. They change things on the ground. So I think now they understand that once again, when President Sisi said there is a red line for a drop of water that affect Egypt, the message is very clear. You saw it on Libya. And things went excellent for us. That means we will achieve our goal again. And it's not necessarily through warfare.
Yes. Doctor, now, do you feel that with all of the international backing and the backing of heads of states and leaders of the international community, do you feel that maybe they have a role to play as well, maybe influencing Ethiopia or trying to influence the Ethiopian stance in terms of negotiating with Egypt and Sudan?
Of course. And I see with a good eye the visit of Minister Ravlov, because once Egypt asked the Security Council to act, it was Russia who stood against Egypt's, it was the political, you know, the diplomatic exchange happens even between allies. So I think the message is clear now for the Ethiopians, that for the government of Ethiopia, that Russia is telling them, listen, we stood with you once, but we won't sacrifice the relations with Egypt now because of you. So I think, yes, maybe world leaders will act. They know that President Sisi, when he spoke about chaos in this region, he means what he means. He means that things won't be all right. And Egypt guaranteed the stability at a certain time. We're not threatening anyone. We're just saying we have the sovereign decision to defend our country and our interest and our water. According to the international law, and President Sisi said it, according to international law, everyone now is a witness that we are exerting all the efforts. So I think that, yes, maybe other countries will intervene at a certain time. But I'm not optimistic, to say the truth, I'm not optimistic about the government there, that they are willing to listen. But the relation between the government in Addis Ababa and the people is very fragile. And I think this time will give us an answer what will happen in Ethiopia.
Well, the negotiations have been going on for a decade now. The tone is starting to change a little bit, but how far do you think it will last? How long do you think it will last? How long do you think it would take for Ethiopia to come around, or for a certain change of strategy and dynamics of the negotiations from the Egyptian and Sudanese side?
Well, we have a deadline as July for the second stage of the Renaissance Dam. I think that Egypt's language now that has changed, I think that things will change also. It will change maybe inside Ethiopia. I think that the people now there are fed up with what's taking place in the country. Maybe the government there will decide a certain time to change its course. We hope so. But if they will swim against the tide, I don't think they will be able to win. As you said, it's a win-win relationship. So I think that the people in Ethiopia wish to have good relations with Egypt and Sudan. We were excellent neighbors for decades. So why now this will happen? I think that the people of Ethiopia know that even this instability inside their country is not a good solution. I think that the people know in Ethiopia that their friends or family, many of them living in Egypt, and they're gaining money here and transferring it to Ethiopia. It will affect the people there. I think that even the Ethiopians in the diaspora working anywhere else in the Arab countries, I think that our friends there will take harsh measures in hiring them. So I think they will be affected in all ways. In addition to that, Egyptian diplomacy is very strong in defending our case. And I think that many people know now in the international community that Egypt is willing to fight diplomatically, but is not willing to negotiate its rights. And there's a huge difference between both. We could fight to achieve the win-win gain or win-win relationship, but I won't negotiate for a defeat. This won't happen.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, diplomacy is one of the tools Egypt is cementing its place internationally and within the African continent. And the Egyptian-African Relations Committee is actually discussing strengthening Egypt's stance in Africa. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
The Standing Committee for the Follow-up of Egyptian-African Relations held a meeting on Sunday to discuss Egyptian activities regarding Africa. The meeting was chaired by Egypt's Deputy Foreign Minister for African Affairs, Hamdi Sanad Louza, and took place in the presence of representatives from various ministries and government bodies. The meeting reviewed ways to strengthen Egypt's move towards the African continent in light of the attention given by the political leadership to this file. It also looked at developments in relations with the DRC, in light of the DRC president's visit to Cairo in February. The meeting additionally dealt with Egypt's relations with Burundi in light of the visit of the Burundian president to Cairo last March. Egypt has stressed that cooperation among countries of the African continent will contribute to boosting joint capabilities in defiance of all challenges facing African states. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has asserted that Egypt spares no effort to place its expertise to face challenges facing African countries in order to achieve cooperation, solidarity among countries for sustainable development as well as for the welfare of the African continent. In March, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry underlined Egypt's stance regarding prioritizing political solutions to disputes in Africa. He emphasized the need to provide adequate and sustainable funding for peacekeeping operations to ensure their success. He also highlighted Cairo's continued efforts in this regard that include the establishment and opening of the Cairo Regional Center for Conflict Resolution and Peacekeeping in Africa. The top Egyptian diplomat noted that Cairo is looking forward to continuing work with various parties to establish peace on the African continent.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Amir. Now, Doctor, since the President el-Sisi assumed his office here, we really worked on strengthening the Egyptian-African relations in general. Obviously, it was manifested mainly in heading the African Union in 2019, and many projects, developmental projects, humanitarian assistance, medical aid during the coronavirus pandemic. There's a lot of efforts being made to strengthen the relations between Egypt and Africa. The President, however, said that if we don't reach an agreement with Ethiopia regarding the Renaissance Dam, it will affect the whole developmental process for the continent of Africa. So how is this file regarding the Renaissance Dam, if we reach a deadlock, how will it affect the rest of the African continent in terms of development?
Well, I think the word affect has several aspects. Economic, first of all, economic relations, economic situation, I mean, security, and security is not military, it's different. Security, and we have to underline this.
Yes.
And also, geopolitical situation in the Red Sea and in the Horn of Africa. And I think this is a huge interest for Russia and China now in their power sharing in the geopolitical situation in Africa against the United States and the EU. So I think that a country of, like Egypt has all these keys, and we have all the keys in our hands. Listen, we had, and we still have, the possibility of playing behind the scenes, and no one could blame us. But we don't want to use this kind of cards. For example, the Iranians in the Middle East are the masters of this kind of game. The militias and how they are acting. Erdogan did it in Libya also, but we stopped it. So I think that it's very easy to play all these cards and create instability, and you will be safe, and no one will blame you. So, and I think that also Egypt had huge role in calming the situation in Sudan, in South Sudan, in Kenya, in Somalia, in Tanzania. We managed to bring all these who are in wars internally to accords, and our mediation was very important. If we will lift our hands, I think things will go back to the chaos. The Europeans won't have the same effect. Yes, they had the colonial influence, but it's not present anymore. The Russians are new in the region. The Chinese are new in the region. Only Egypt, who has the possibility of maintaining peace and stability. So let's say, do not play with the lion, because we are the safe part in this region, and we showed the world Libya could have been a huge disaster for Europe, not only Africa, and we calmed the situation. We had all the possibility of blackmailing the Europeans. We didn't do it. So I think the same thing is happening now. We are giving the signals to the whole world. We have the strong military, we have the strong intelligence service, we have the strong diplomacy, and it's up to you to choose. And we have the access of the Suez Canal. We showed the world how capable we are of solving a problem in the matter of 7 days, which is a huge problem with our own efforts. So we're showing the world we are capable of acting.
Well, Dr. Amir, now you've mentioned the file within Libya. Now, Egypt has been exerting a lot of effort over the past few years, as you've mentioned, dealing with the situation in Libya that is going very well according to the set schedule and plan. Solved the issue within Sudan, worked on normalizing ties with countries such as Qatar. We're seeing a lot of change in the dynamics between Egypt and within its foreign affairs file, even as you've mentioned with Turkey, when we were talking about the Jafra line. Now, doesn't Ethiopia, can't they see the signs of, well, there is a way for Egypt to actually solve it diplomatically? Don't they learn from these past experiments and experiences within the Egyptian diplomacy?
I think the majority of the political powers there want peace with Egypt. And I think that's why now there are civil wars inside the country there. It's not representing the people. And I think that the Prime Minister knows that very well. So I think many people in Ethiopia wish to negotiate with Egypt. And what I can see as a good sign is that even the media inside Ethiopia didn't manage to mobilize the people against Egypt. And they're not willing to be against Egypt. And I think that even the religious powers there, which is the Orthodox Church in Ethiopia, or the Muslim community there, the Sunnis, they are all calling for peace and negotiations, because the Orthodox Church is a brother church to the sister church to the Coptic Orthodox Church. The Sunnis there are affiliated to Al-Azhar. So even the nations there is religiously pro-peace with Egypt.
Yes.
So the guy, I mean, Abiy Ahmed is isolated, I think. So I think that it's a matter of pressure that could push him to change sides or to leave the stage for someone who will say, well, I have to work with Egypt. We never, ever played the game of separating one nation or making them one against the other. Answering the question, for example, when the revolution took place in Sudan against al-Bashir, there were some factions calling the new authorities to stand against Egypt. Egypt is our enemy, we have to fight. And when they sat together and started negotiating, they were the minority of all, not representing Sudan. And once they were sitting, all the factions, they said we have to have peace with Egypt, normalizing relations with Egypt, brotherly relations with Egypt. Same thing in South Sudan. And that's why I said we have also the intelligence. We have General Abbas Kamel, who went there. President Sisi gave the orders that we have to make them negotiate between them. There is no way for this new country to have civil war between Salva Kiir and his vice president. No, they have to negotiate. And President Sisi went by himself to Juba, and it was peace signed there in his presence. So it's not our policy. The same thing in Ethiopia. I think that the people there are united about one thing: Egypt is a friend, Egypt is a brotherly country. We should not go into this tunnel of being stubborn and not cooperating with Cairo.
Yes. Well, you've mentioned one kind of security, which is the economic security. Now, when Egypt was heading the African Union, they actually worked on establishing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, really worked on dealing with a lot of African issues and crises and working in the developmental side of it to achieve sustainable development for 2063. Now, Congo being head of the African Union, can they actually exercise any sort of influence regarding this file? I'm not saying that they should impose economic sanctions on Ethiopia, but is there a way for them to apply some sort of pressure, or how effective really is Congo in these negotiations? Because they've been presiding on the three-way negotiations between the three countries. How far can the economic security be a huge factor in flipping Ethiopians' stance regarding this issue?
Of course, these are the bordering countries of the Nile also, and they have relations between them: Congo, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, and also they are surrounding Ethiopia. And I think that Ethiopia cannot afford any more isolation. They're isolated diplomatically. As you see now, we have all the visits. No one is visiting Addis Ababa. That's why there is question mark why no one is telling them we are siding with you. Because someone is playing the game behind the scenes and everyone knows who are these factions or crime. And once again, we are not against the dam, and we are not against its construction, and we are not against development and economy and the economic development. We are against the mechanism of how it will work. We will all profit from it. And President Sisi said it. We are not against the economic development of Ethiopia. And that's why we are appreciated, not only in Africa, but in the international community. Because we're giving them all the signs. And whenever Ethiopia is in trouble, there are always Egyptian airplanes going there with the medical aid and helping them. We were never, and we will be never late in helping our brothers. But answering your question, these countries could minimize their relations with Addis Ababa at a certain time, because we have, and this is the soft power, we could tell them, well, if you have agricultural relations with them, we could help you in projects and do not go to Ethiopia. You can play this card. If you need any kind of security info for your protections, you don't have to negotiate with Addis Ababa. We have the possibility of giving you all the info. So there is all kinds of pressure. And then let's not forget that these are developing countries, and Egypt has the capability of helping them. We have a lot to offer, more than Ethiopia can offer. And pardon me, every country is looking after its own interests.
Yes.
So they won't sacrifice the relationship with Egypt for Ethiopia if we will make the pressure.
Yes. One final question, because we're running out of time. You've mentioned, Dr. Amir, that it's not just Ethiopia that we're negotiating, or the strength of the Ethiopian stance and position really is influenced by other foreign interferences. So should we have some sort of a different strategy in negotiations, that being mindful that we're not just negotiating with Ethiopia, but we're negotiating with the people behind this file that is taking place in Ethiopia?
Well, it's a chess game, of course, and we understand that we are negotiating with other powers, not Ethiopia. As these powers think that we will rush to a military solution, and then they will portray the poor country of Ethiopia being aggressed because they want to develop. We understand this game. They wanted to play the same game with Egypt and Sinai when we stopped terrorism. And they said that we will kill the civilians. We never did it, and we will never do it. I think that the message is clear for Qatar, for Turkey, for other countries, that if you want to normalize relations with Egypt, you have to back off in several issues, including Ethiopia.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Amir has mentioned, the Egyptian diplomacy knows its way in dealing with these kind of issues. We are witnessing that in our modern times, and also we have a long history of diplomatic victories within the Egyptian political life. Also, Dr. Amir mentioned that peace is not an option. Peace should be always the first and the last option, and patience should be exercised till the last second. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Cherif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, always a pleasure having you with us. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on NILE International. Pardon. Happy Ramadan, and thank you for joining us.